My sons put me in a nursing home for my retirement money. They never expected the secret. Mom, this is for your own good. Daniel smiled as if those 6 words could soften the knot forming in my chest. He held the passenger door open while I climbed. Out of his SUV, my knees stiff from the hour-long drive. Behind him stood my younger son, Kevin, staring down at his phone instead of looking at me. The building in front of us looked pleasant enough. A brick entrance. Fresh flowers in neatly trimmed beds. A white wooden sign read, Maple Grove Senior Living Center. To anyone passing by, it probably looked peaceful. To me, it looked like the end of my life. I turned toward my sons. I still don't understand why I'm here. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. You've been lonely since Dad passed away. I've been lonely for 22 years. Exactly, he replied. This place has nurses, activities, friends, people your own age. I have friends. Kevin finally looked up from his phone. Mom, don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder? I stared at both of them, searching their faces for the little boys I used to know. Daniel had once cried because he found a baby bird that had fallen from its nest. Kevin refused to sleep unless I read him the same bedtime story every single night. Those boys would never have abandoned their mother. These men. I wasn't so sure. I'm 70, I said quietly. Not helpless. Daniel forced another smile. No one's saying you are. But you're putting me in a nursing home. It's temporary. Temporary. People always used that word when they were lying. I followed them inside anyway. The lobby smelled of fresh coffee and lemon polish. Residents sat quietly around a television playing an old black and white movie. Some smiled as we walked past. Others simply stared, almost as if they already knew why I was there. A cheerful receptionist greeted us. You must be Mrs. Maria Thompson. Yes, we've been expecting you. Expecting me? Nobody had asked if I wanted to come. The receptionist slid a clipboard across the counter. Just a few signatures. I adjusted my reading glasses. Most of the pages looked like admission forms. Medical history, emergency contacts, facility policies. Then one page caught my attention. It mentioned financial responsibility. I frowned. What is this? Before the receptionist could answer, Daniel reached over my shoulder. It's just standard paperwork. I'd like to read it, Kevin sighed loudly. Mom, I said I'd like to read it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Daniel's smile faded just enough for me to notice. Then it returned. Of course. I spent nearly 10 minutes reading every line. Years ago, after my husband passed away, I'd promised myself I would never sign another document without understanding it first. Finally, I signed. The receptionist smiled warmly. Wonderful. Daniel immediately reached for my purse. I'll take this home. I pulled it back. No, you won't need it here. I've carried this purse every day for 15 years. It's safe at home. So is my house, I replied. His jaw tightened. Just for a second, then he laughed softly. Suit yourself. That tiny flash of irritation told me something wasn't right. A nurse approached with a wheelchair. I can walk, I said. It's our policy. I walked in. The nurse looked embarrassed. Daniel answered for her. Mom, please. His voice sounded calm, almost rehearsed. Not wanting to make a scene, I lowered myself into the chair. As the nurse wheeled me toward my room, I glanced over my shoulder. Daniel and Kevin weren't watching me leave. Instead, they had stepped into a corner near the reception desk. Daniel pulled a folded document from his jacket. Kevin leaned over it. Both of them smiled. Then they shook hands. Not like brothers, like business partners who had just closed a deal. A chill crept up my spine. Whatever was on that paper, it had nothing to do with my happiness. Room 214 was small but spotless. A neatly made bed sat beneath a single window overlooking the parking lot. A dresser, a closet, One framed painting of a quiet lake. No family photos. No memories. No sign that anyone expected me to build a life there. "This is your room," the nurse said kindly. "If you need anything, press this button." She left me alone. I slowly walked to the window. Outside, Daniel's SUV was still parked near the entrance. For one hopeful moment, I believed they were coming back. Maybe they'd forgotten something. Maybe they'd realized they'd made a mistake. Then I watched both of my sons climb into the vehicle. Neither looked toward my window. The SUV pulled away. I stood there until the taillights disappeared beyond the trees. Only then did I allow myself to cry. Not because I'd been left in a nursing home, but because I finally understood something every mother dreads admitting. My sons hadn't left because they had no choice. They had left because they wanted to. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. An elderly woman stood in the doorway. Silver hair, kind eyes, a walking cane decorated with tiny blue flowers. "First day?" she asked gently. I nodded. "I'm Eleanor. Maria." She smiled with the sadness of someone who had introduced herself too many times. "I've lived here 3 years. Do your children visit?" Her smile disappeared. They visited once. The silence between us answered every question. Before leaving, Eleanor paused at the door. "Can I give you one piece of advice?" "Please," she lowered her voice. "Whatever your family told you. Don't let anyone take control of your money." My heartbeat quickened. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, a nurse called her name from the hallway. "I'll tell you tomorrow," Eleanor whispered. Then she was gone. That evening I picked up my phone and called Daniel. Voicemail. I called Kevin. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. A knot formed in my stomach. I opened my banking app to check my retirement account. Incorrect password. I frowned. I tried again. Incorrect password. No. I hadn't forgotten it. I'd used the same password for years. Hands trembling, I called the bank. After confirming my identity, the representative became unusually quiet. "Mrs. Thompson." "Yes?" "It appears a financial power of attorney was added to your account 3 days ago." The room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What?" "I'm very sorry." "Who authorized it?" Another pause, then she quietly answered. "According to our records, your son, Daniel Thompson, now has legal authority over your retirement accounts. 3 days ago." That was the same afternoon Daniel had insisted on taking me to sign what he called updated retirement paperwork. I had trusted him. Now I wasn't sure what I had actually signed. Slowly, I reached inside my purse. Beneath the torn inner lining, exactly where I had hidden it years ago. My fingers found the tiny brass key. Neither of my sons knew it existed, and if they believed they'd already taken everything from me, they had forgotten about the one secret I had protected for more than 20 years. End of chapter 1. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the bank representative's voice repeating the same sentence. "Your son, Daniel Thompson, now has legal authority over your retirement accounts." The words echoed through my mind until dawn. For years, I'd believed trust was something you earned through love. Now I realized love could be the very thing someone used against you. I sat by the window as the first rays of sunlight stretched across the courtyard outside. Residents wandered the walking paths with nurses beside them. A few laughed over morning coffee, while others stared quietly into the distance, as if waiting for visitors who had stopped coming long ago. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. It was Eleanor. She carried 2 paper cups of coffee, I figured. "You could use a friend," she said with a warm smile. "I don't think I've ever needed one." "More?" She handed me a cup and settled into the chair beside my bed. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. Sometimes silence tells more truth than conversation ever can. Finally, Eleanor looked at me. You checked your bank account, didn't you? I turned toward her surprised. How did you know? She sighed. Because that's exactly what I did my second day here. My stomach tightened. What happened? Eleanor looked toward the hallway before lowering her voice. My daughter convinced me to move here after I broke my hip. I'm sorry. So was I. Until I learned she'd transferred nearly every dollar from my savings while I was recovering. I stared at her. Did the police help? She laughed bitterly. There wasn't much they could do. She had paperwork giving her permission. A power of attorney? She nodded slowly. I trusted my own child. Those words hit me harder than anything else she'd said. Because they were my words too. Breakfast was served in the dining room. I carried my tray to Eleanor's table, where 3 other residents were already seated. Frank was a retired firefighter with broad shoulders. That age hadn't completely stolen. Dorothy had once owned a bakery. Downtown, Walter had been a high school history teacher for almost 40 years. They greeted me kindly. After a few minutes of small talk, Frank asked quietly, So, which one was it? I frowned. Which what? Son or daughter? I looked around the table. No one seemed confused by the question. My sons, Frank nodded. I figured. What do you mean? Dorothy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Most of us are here because someone wanted something. My nephew wanted my farm, Walter said. My daughter wanted my house. Eleanor added. My grandson emptied my retirement account. Frank admitted. No one sounded angry. Anymore. Only tired. It wasn't just a nursing home. It was a place filled with people who had trusted their families one last time. I suddenly realized something that chilled me. If this had happened to so many people, then someone out there had learned exactly how to do it. After breakfast, I returned to my room and searched through my purse again. The brass key was still hidden beneath the torn lining. Fingers wrapped around it for several seconds. It gave me a strange sense of comfort. Not because it was valuable, because it represented one decision I'd made, completely on my own. One decision my sons knew nothing about. I carefully tucked it back into its hiding place. Then I reached for my phone. There was only one person I trusted enough to call. Richard Collins, my attorney for nearly 25 years. He had handled my husband's estate. He had written my first will. He knew every important financial decision I'd ever made when his receptionist answered. I almost cried with relief. Collins and Harper Law Offices. This is Maria Thompson. There was a brief pause. Mrs. Thompson? Mr. Collins has been trying to reach you. My heart skipped. He has? Please hold, only a few seconds. Passed before Richard's familiar voice came on the line. Maria. Richard, I've been worried. So have I. His voice immediately became serious. Tell me exactly where you are, I explained. Everything. The nursing home. The bank. The power of attorney. The unanswered phone calls. When I finished, there was complete silence. Finally, he spoke. I was afraid this might happen. My breath caught. What do you mean? Daniel came to my office last week. I gripped the phone tighter. He said you wanted to simplify your financial affairs. I never said that. I know. So why did you let him? I didn't. His answer surprised me. I refused. What? He brought documents prepared by another attorney. They weren't created in my office. Cold wave of fear washed over me. If they weren't yours, they were prepared somewhere. Else, I closed my eyes. Daniel hadn't simply updated my paperwork. He had gone around the one person who knew my wishes. Richard continued. Carefully, I reviewed the county filings this morning. What did you find? Several documents have already been changed. My pulse raced. My retirement accounts. Yes. My medical power of attorney. Also changed. My financial authority changed as well. I leaned against the wall for support. What else? There was another pause. I need you to stay calm. Richard, they've also attempted to transfer ownership rights connected to your home. The room suddenly felt too small. My house? Yes. But they haven't succeeded, I frowned. Why not? Because something prevented the transfer. For the first time since arriving at Maple Grove, I felt a tiny spark of hope. What stopped them? I can't discuss everything over the phone. Please, Richard lowered his voice. There is still one legal document connected to your estate that no one has accessed. I froze. One legal document, immediately. My thoughts drifted to the tiny brass key hidden inside my purse. Could it be? Richard spoke again. Do you still have the key? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't trust him. Because hearing him ask that question confirmed what I'd suspected all along. Remembered, he had never forgotten. I'll come see you this afternoon, he said. We need to talk in person. What is it, Richard? He took a slow breath. When I mention it, don't react if anyone else is nearby. Understand. There is one place your sons haven't looked. I waited. The safety deposit box. My heart skipped a beat because only I knew what was inside. Richard Collins arrived just after lunch. Even after 25 years, he still carried himself with the quiet confidence that had earned him the respect of nearly every judge in our county. His silver hair was thinner than I remembered, but his sharp blue eyes hadn't changed. The receptionist led him to the small visitors' lounge, where sunlight spilled across a row of worn leather chairs. The moment he saw me, he stood and gently squeezed my hands. Maria, it's good to see you. Richard, I wish it were under better circumstances. We sat across from each other. Before saying another word, Richard glanced around the room to make sure no one else was listening. Then he leaned forward. Do you still have the key? Without speaking, I slipped my hand into my purse and felt the familiar brass key hidden beneath the torn lining. I didn't take it out, but Richard noticed the slight movement of my hand. His shoulders relaxed. Good, he whispered. So they never found it. They searched everything else, I replied quietly. But not there. Richard nodded. Exactly as you planned. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then my mind drifted back more than 20 years, to the day I'd decided to create the secret that now stood between my sons and everything I'd worked for. It was 6 months after my husband, Thomas, died. The house felt impossibly quiet. Daniel had just started law school, and Kevin was finishing college. Every bill seemed to arrive at once, and every decision rested on my shoulders. One rainy afternoon, I sat across from Richard in his office, exhausted from another 12-hour shift at the county hospital. He slid a folder toward me. Maria, now that Thomas is gone, you need to think about protecting your estate. I smiled sadly. What estate? My house, my retirement, my life, insurance. I don't have much. You have enough. That it deserves protection. I laughed softly. My boys would never fight over money. Richard folded his hands. I hope you're right, but hope isn't an estate. Plan. His words stayed with me. Then he told me a story about another family. A widowed father had trusted his children completely. When dementia began affecting his memory, one son convinced him to sign documents giving away nearly everything. By the time the truth came out, it was too late. The family never recovered. That story frightened me more than I wanted to admit, not because I believed my sons would betray me, but because I had seen how grief, debt, and greed could change people. I want to leave everything equally, I told Richard. You can, but I also want one safeguard. What kind? I looked out the rain-covered window. If anyone ever tries to take what isn't theirs, I want the truth to protect itself. Richard smiled. I think we can arrange that. Together, we created something almost no one knew existed, a legal document perfectly valid. Properly witnessed. stored, somewhere no family member could accidentally or intentionally find it. The only thing linking me to it was a tiny brass key. I tucked it away and almost forgot about it. Until now. Back in the present, Richard looked at me with quiet determination. Thomas would be proud of you. I never wanted to use it. I know. I trusted my sons. So did every parent who ever walked into my office. His words hurt because they were true. Just then, my phone buzzed, a notification from my bank. Several large withdrawals had been made from my retirement account. I stared at the screen. $18,500, $12,000, $9,800. My hands began to shake. Richard looked at the phone. They've started spending it. I swallowed hard. My retirement. I'm afraid they're moving. Quickly, I closed my eyes. That money wasn't for luxury. It wasn't for vacations. It represented 42 years of night shifts over time. Birthdays spent at the hospital instead of at home. Christmas mornings cut short because patients needed care. Every dollar had cost me something, and my sons were spending it as if they'd earned it themselves. Across town, Daniel couldn't hide his excitement. He stood inside a luxury car dealership, running his hand across the hood of a brand new black SUV. Kevin laughed. Mom would have had a heart attack if she saw us buying this. Daniel shrugged. She won't? The salesman handed him the keys. Congratulations. Daniel signed the paperwork without hesitation. Feels good, Kevin said as they climbed inside. It'll feel even better once we sell Mom's house. Daniel smiled. That's the real payday. 3 days later, the brothers met a real estate agent outside my home. The little white house looked exactly as I'd left it. Fresh flowers still lined the front porch. Rose bushes bloomed beneath the kitchen window. Daniel unlocked the front door. Shouldn't take long. The agent walked through each room. Taking photos. This will sell quickly, she said. Especially in this neighborhood. By afternoon, they already had an interested buyer. The offer was close to asking price. Everything seemed perfect, until closing paperwork began. 2 weeks later, Daniel sat confidently inside the office of the title company. Kevin leaned back in his chair, already discussing how they'd divide the proceeds. The closing officer studied her computer. Then her expression changed. She frowned, clicked again, looked at another document. Finally, she removed her glasses. I'm sorry, Daniel smiled politely. What seems to be the problem? There appears to be an issue with the title. What kind of issue? She turned the monitor toward herself, reading carefully. I'm afraid we can't complete this sale. Kevin leaned forward. What are you talking about? We have power of attorney. I understand. Then what's the problem? The woman hesitated before speaking. The title company discovered a legal filing that prevents any transfer of ownership until a specific condition has been satisfied. Daniel's smile disappeared. What filing? She slowly closed the folder. I'm afraid you'll need to speak with the attorney who prepared it. The room fell silent. Neither brother recognized the document number printed across the top of the page, and neither of them had any idea that the title company had found something neither of my sons knew existed. Daniel stormed out of the title company's office with the document clutched tightly in his hand. Kevin hurried after him, struggling to keep pace. What the hell was that? Kevin demanded. I don't know. You said everything was taken care of. It was. Then why can't we sell the house? Daniel stopped beside his new SUV and unfolded the document again. At the bottom of the page was one name that instantly made his stomach tighten. Richard Collins. Kevin noticed it too. Isn't that Mom's old lawyer? Daniel nodded slowly. I thought she'd stopped using him years ago. Apparently, she hadn't. The next morning, Daniel marched into Richard Collins's law office without an appointment. The receptionist recognized him immediately. Mr. Collins is with a client. This won't take long. I'm afraid you'll have to schedule. Daniel ignored her and pushed open Richard's office door. Richard calmly looked up from his desk. I assume knocking has gone out of fashion. Daniel forced a smile. I need 5 minutes. Richard closed the file in front of him. You have 2. Daniel tossed the title report onto the desk. What is this? Richard glanced at it. You already know. I have legal power of attorney. You have certain legal authority. I own my mother's financial affairs. Richard leaned back in his chair. No? Daniel frowned. What do you mean, no? You control exactly what your mother authorized. I have signed documents. So do I. Silence filled the room. Daniel's confidence slipped just enough for Richard to notice. There is a legal filing preventing the transfer of your mother's home, Richard continued. Remove it. I can't. You created it. I executed your mother's instructions. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then tell me how to remove it. Richard smiled politely. I work for your mother, not you. Daniel stood abruptly. You're making a mistake. No, you are. Without another word, Richard opened the office door. I believe our conversation is over. When Daniel returned home, Kevin was already waiting. So, Daniel threw the document across the kitchen table. He won't tell us anything. Kevin ran both hands through his hair. This is getting out of control. No. Daniel shook his head. It just means Mom planned something. Kevin laughed nervously. Our 70-year-old mother outsmarted a lawyer? Daniel looked at him. No. A 70-year-old mother hired one. For the first time since leaving me at Maple Grove, neither brother looked confident. That afternoon, Richard arrived at the nursing home. He carried a thick leather briefcase. Maria smiled weakly. I've never been happier to see an attorney. I wish we were meeting under happier circumstances. They sat together in a quiet conference room. Richard carefully removed several folders. I've reviewed everything. And? Your sons have already withdrawn nearly $40,000. Maria closed her eyes. They're spending it, yes. But they haven't won. Richard placed another folder on the table. This is why. Maria looked at the familiar seal, her signature, Thomas's signature, Richard's signature. The document had been prepared 21 years earlier. I almost forgot about this. I never did. Richard smiled gently. You told me something the day we signed it. Maria tried to remember. Then the words returned. I don't want to protect my money from strangers. I want to protect it from temptation. Richard nodded. You were wiser than you realized. He slowly opened the folder. Inside was the original trust agreement. Not a will, not a power of attorney, a trust. One designed to activate automatically if anyone attempted to exploit Maria through fraud, coercion, or financial abuse. Richard looked directly into her eyes. Maria, the trust became active the moment your sons used that fraudulent power of attorney. She stared at him in disbelief. What does that mean? It means they no longer control your house. My retirement? Any money they withdrew after activating the trust can be challenged. My investments? Protected. Maria felt tears welling in her eyes. I thought I'd lost everything. Richard smiled. You lost access. You never lost ownership. 3 days later, Daniel and Kevin received official court notices. Both brothers read the first page in stunned silence. Notice of emergency hearing. What is this? Kevin whispered. Daniel continued reading. Richard filed for an injunction. A what? It freezes every disputed asset. Kevin's face turned pale. Our accounts? Frozen. The house? Frozen. My truck? If it was purchased using disputed money. Daniel couldn't finish the sentence. His phone rang. It was the dealership. His new luxury SUV had been flagged because the down payment originated from funds now under legal investigation. For the first time. Fear replaced confidence. The courtroom was nearly full. Richard sat beside Maria, who looked calm despite everything that had happened. Across the aisle sat Daniel and Kevin with their attorney. The judge entered. Everyone stood. After reviewing the opening documents, the judge looked toward Daniel. Mr. Thompson. Yes, Your Honor. Did your mother knowingly authorize every financial action you've taken? Daniel answered without hesitation. Yes. Richard remained silent. Then the judge turned toward Kevin. You agree with your brother's statement? I do. Richard finally stood. Your Honor, I have evidence suggesting those statements are false. The courtroom grew quiet. Richard presented bank records, medical reports, witness statements, security footage showing Maria's condition on the day she signed the documents. One by one, the brothers' explanations began falling apart. Daniel insisted everything had been his mother's idea, but the timeline didn't match. Kevin claimed she wanted permanent nursing care, yet her physician testified she was fully capable of living independently. Every answer created another contradiction. Every lie uncovered another lie. By the end of the afternoon, even the brothers' own attorney looked increasingly uncomfortable. The judge removed his glasses and slowly reviewed the growing stack of evidence. Then he looked toward Richard. Counselor, you've presented substantial documentation. Richard nodded. I'm not finished, Your Honor. I gathered as much. He reached into his leather briefcase. Very carefully, he removed one large sealed envelope. The courtroom fell completely silent. Even Daniel stopped breathing for a moment. The judge studied the envelope before extending his hand. Bring it forward. Richard walked to the bench and placed it gently before him. The judge looked at the handwritten note across the front. He raised one eyebrow. Then, the judge asked for the final envelope.